is Southern Fried Sports with BamaOnline Senior Analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
It is 11 a.m. on a Friday morning, a gorgeous Friday morning in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Time once again for Southern Fried Sports right here on your home for University of Alabama Athletics. Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier of BamaOnline.com with you each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. The show, as always, brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. 205-752-0211. That's going to get you in touch with Heather, the chocolate lady, Emily, and that great staff out there at Peterbrook Chocolatier. Go ahead and get that Easter basket order in. Can customize that baby for you. Got a wide variety of chocolate bunnies for you at Peterbrook Chocolatier. And then you've got the daily staples like the chocolate popcorn, maybe those chocolate dipped strawberries. You can get them in milk, dark or white chocolate. Talked about those chocolate apples here in the last few days. That's always a really, really good call. Joined as always on the program by Mr. Josh Smith, executive producer of Southern Fried Sports, with whom I combined to form the 60-minute man of Sports Talk Radio. Josh, how you hanging in there on this? I guess it's a TGIF. They all seem the same right now these days. You know, don't seem all that different from day to day, do they?
Hey, at least it's definitely kind of been that vibe here for the last few days. And, I mean, we'll happily keep the weather the way it's been, and hopefully it'll warm up here too. But it's hopefully going to be getting back to a normalcy, a status quo here in the coming weeks or months. But that's the one thing that I feel has just been so apprehensive. It's just not having that certain date, and it's just been the unknowns going forward.
Yeah, it's been Groundhog Day in some ways, but then it's ever-changing during this pandemic in far too many other ways in our day-to-day life. 205-342-9904. That is the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. If you'd like to check in with us on this Friday morning, we'd love to hear from you. There has been some good news here this morning on the University of Alabama men's basketball front, as a highly regarded perimeter player for the class of 2020 has committed this morning to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Josh Primo, north of the border. I mean, it's just the Canadian Tide at this point. I mean, when you go around the different sports at Alabama right now, you've got John Mechie with ties to Canada. John Mechie, the Alabama wide receiver, was born in Taiwan, lived in Ghana, and also Canada before finishing his prep football at the Petty School in New Jersey. John Mechie's been a few places globally, huh? You got Owen Diodati, the outstanding freshman outfielder for the Alabama baseball team. And now you've got both members to this point of Alabama's men's basketball recruiting class for the 2020 cycle, both from or have ties at least to the Toronto, Ontario area, with Josh Primo joining Keon Ambrose Hilton. Primo, a 6'6" combo guard, that sort of long, athletic perimeter player that Nate Oates can't get enough of with the style of play that he likes to employ. And Primo can also knock down that perimeter shot. You know, Nate Oates isn't looking for shooters. You know, people talk about got to get some shooters. There's plenty of shooters out there. What Nate Oates and these other coaches are looking for are makers. You know, plenty of guys and gals out there that can shoot. Can shoot. Everybody can shoot. Can you make them? And Josh Primo looks like, in terms of upside as well, this is a guy who's just 17 years old. As we've talked about before here on the program, Josh Primo actually reclassified from the 2021 class to the 2020 group. And so now he becomes, again, the second player in this 2020 class for Nate Oates. We'll see where it goes from here. You know, you're still going to have decisions to be made by Kyra Lewis Jr., John Petty in relation to professional basketball. It could be a couple, three more newcomers to this class before it is all said and done. So we'll talk about Josh Primo coming on board with Charlie Potter, my colleague there at BamaOnline.com. We'll do that with Charlie coming up in about 15 minutes or so. We're also scheduled to check in with Pops. I did not screen Pops this morning, just to give Josh Smith the proper heads up there. So I don't know where that's going to go with Pops, but I continue to hear from listeners to the program. They enjoy it more when there's absolutely no idea where Pops might be headed. So we hope to catch up with Pops later in the program as well. Now, you're continuing to see the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic on the world of sports. And again, that's understanding that's very much secondary to what we've got going on globally with the infection rate now in the United States surpassing any other country in the world that has been impacted by this dreadful disease. The death rate continues to climb, so we pay all due respect to that, first and foremost. And we hope that you are continuing to take the needed precautions to keep not only yourself, but others that you may come into contact with as healthy as we possibly can as we try to beat back this curve and shorten the catastrophic sort of potential that is there with the coronavirus. But on the sports front, you're starting to see the dollars and cents really add up in terms of the impact. You saw yesterday, the NCAA announced that it will distribute $225 million to its Division I member schools in June. That's nearly 2/3 less than the $600 million it was scheduled to hand out in installments from April to June. Do the math on that. Division I schools going to get about 1/3 of what they were supposed to get because of the cancellation, basically, of the 2020 NCAA Men's Division I basketball tournament, aka the Big Dance.
That just
there is
blows
insurance.
my mind.
Isn't that crazy?
That obviously it's a huge event, but that single event is 2/3.
Well, and it's just gonna, conferences like the Atlantic Sun Conference, your mid-majors, your lower Division I conferences, man, it's gonna crush them. I saw where the ASUN commissioner, I believe it was yesterday, said that the ASUN was expecting a check or payments adding up to somewhere in the neighborhood of $5.8 million. And now that league is going to get less than half of that. And so it kind of tells you where it's going to sit with, especially leagues like the ASUN that are essentially basketball leagues, right? I mean, they're literally totally, they don't have football at most of those member schools, or at least not Division I football, FBS football at those schools. But you're going to see it even at leagues that do, because we talked about it before. Some of these, the Conference USAs and some of those leagues that have teams that are dependent on these paycheck games, even at the FCS level. I mean, Tennessee Martin was scheduled to come in here. Still might. We're hopeful. You ever been more hopeful that you'll see Tennessee Martin in Bryant-Denny Stadium in November than you ever could have imagined you would be? I mean, think about that. That's a game that right now in any other year you'd be looking at and thinking about, okay, how am I going to unload these 4 tickets for Tennessee Martin? Boy, if I told you today that, hey, you're going to be able to go see Alabama and Tennessee Martin in November, you'd be out of the world thrilled, wouldn't you? Over the moon. Absolutely.
Think anybody would be leaving before the fourth quarter?
If you told them today that they had to stay for the fourth quarter of the Tennessee Martin, I think most Alabama fans would take that and say, as long as there's a game, yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there for the fourth quarter. We'll be there for, until they tell us to leave Bryant-Denny Stadium. Yeah. We're told to leave. I think that would be the case. So that's where you're at in terms of this financial fallout. Did you see what Kirk Herbstreit had to say on ESPN radio last night, Josh? Boy, Kirk didn't do anything for the morale of college football fans, hopeful to see the 2020 season come off without a hitch.
I was hoping I was dreaming about it and that I was going to wake up and, oh no, it was just, it was
Herbie
just
said that he
wasn't
would
true.
be shocked. Yeah, Herbie said he would be shocked if there are NFL or college football seasons in 2020. And really, there's either going to be both or there's going to be neither. Kind of like the NBA and the sort of fallout that game that was canceled literally seconds before tip-off in Oklahoma City. What was that, a Wednesday night a couple weeks ago? You had the Jazz in OKC. Kind of triggered all this in the sports world. And they canceled that game just before tip-off. And then the next day, Alabama, Tennessee was supposed to take place up in Nashville in the second round of the SEC tournament. And that got scrubbed. And that is the dominoes. Those are the dominoes that started to fall. So once the NBA went dark, you knew college basketball was coming right behind it, and really the rest of sports in general for the late winter into spring sports have followed suit. So, yeah, it's not going to be one or the other with the NFL or college football. There's either going to be both in some form or fashion, or there's going to be neither. But Herbie said, I'll be shocked if we have NFL football this fall, if we have college football. I'll be so surprised if that happens. Just because, from what I understand, people that I listen to, you're 12 to 18 months from a vaccine. I don't know how you let these guys into locker rooms and let stadiums be filled up and how you can play ball. I just don't know how you can do it with the optics of it. Hard to argue with that. Sitting here on March the 27th now. Well, I think obviously we're all hopeful and we're trying to take maybe more of a one day at a time approach, not only because it benefits us in terms of dealing with this pandemic and the spread of it, but our mental health too. I don't think anybody wants to sit here on March the 27th and already start making some hard and fast determinations about the potential for no football in the fall. I think you have to have it sort of in the recesses of your mind. And certainly if you're one of the Power 5 leagues or college football leagues in general, the NCAA, you're obviously working on that behind the scenes. But boy, when you have one of the preeminent voices and faces of the sport come out in late March and run that out there, oof. That's rough. Again, I think it's something you have to very much acknowledge as a possibility. But I'm not quite ready to go to that point and sort of discussing it. I mean, we've sort of outlined some potential scenarios of a limited college football season. I think it's more than fair, absolutely right now, to sort of discuss those possibilities like we have on this program, like others have written about, others have talked about. But to go to the shocked if there's a season card in late March, wow, that's not something a lot of people want to sort of deal with right now. 205-342-9904. That is the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line if you'd like to jump on board with us. You got more mock drafts. You know, the NFL, as we talked about, trying to keep the sports fans afloat during these tough times. Roger Goodell just ain't hearing it, you know. He apparently continues to get feedback from clubs about maybe postponing the NFL draft next month, set for April 23rd to the 25th, and Roger just keeps sending them memos back. No, draft's going on. We're doing it. So that's the plan as of right now. And with that, you continue to see the mocks come out. I know NFL.com here in the last day or so released a 4-round mock from NFL.com draft analyst Chad Reuter. And looky there in Chad Reuter's 4-round mock. Who's he got at number 2 overall to the Washington Redskins? Tua Tonga Vailoa. How about that? Tua up to 2 in Chad Reuter's 4-round mock. Chad Reuter also has Henry Ruggs III as the number 8 overall selection to the Denver Broncos, which would make, in this mock draft anyway, would make Henry Ruggs III the number 1 wide receiver off the board for the 2020 NFL draft. And in this scenario, Chad Reuter has the Broncos actually trading up to 8 swapping first-round picks with the Arizona Cardinals to go get Henry Ruggs. Reuter also has Jerry Jeudy at number 13 overall to the San Francisco 49ers. His reasoning being Emmanuel Sanders moving on to the New Orleans Saints. Could plug Jerry Jeudy in right there. Is Jerry Jeudy a lot like Deebo Samuel, though? Do the Niners already have a Jerry Jeudy type? I guess you could always use another. Always use another playmaker for sure. But I'd be interested to see how those two guys would complement each other. I guess if you had Sanders, in that same rotation with Samuels, you could make Jeudy and Samuels work. Reuter also has Jedrick Wills to Arizona at the 15th pick. Has 4 Alabama first-rounders. That's kind of low compared to what we've seen. We talked to some guys earlier in the week, had 6 Alabama players in the first round. I'll tell you who Chad Reuter isn't all that high on. Actually, we'll get to that coming up a little bit later in the program. A couple of guys missing from Chad's first round that we'll talk about. And they're also, one of them anyways, missing from Chad Reuter's second round. Get into more of that coming up a little bit later in the show. You know what else we've got? You know what we do have to look forward to this weekend? And I know, right? It's hard to really view anything as a weekend because it seems like it's Monday every day of the week. But you know what dropped first thing this morning on Netflix? Ozark season 3. I'm good. I'm good for the weekend, man. In fact, that probably won't even last me through midnight tonight. I'll probably binge that sucker. We're going to head to our first break. When we come back, we'll check in with Charlie Potter at BamaOnline.com on SFS, presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier on Tide 100.9 FM right after this. Back with more of a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BamaOnline.com. We've got a 24-hour curfew going into effect, as you heard from Tuscaloosa Mayor Walt Maddox last night. So how about that? That's going to crank up Sunday night. And I'll tell you again, man, it is just so rough for the young folks, the class of 2020 types. And I understand they're resilient. I understand there are far more people out there hurting on a much greater level than the class of 2020 young people that are essentially losing the second half of their senior years. And that's basically what we've got right now. And not just in terms of the school experience, but from a sports perspective, from an extracurricular activity perspective, really feel for these folks that didn't have the sort of proper closure. We've equated it more to college athletics here on the program because of eligibility issues. And on Monday, we know that the NCAA is apparently going to address the extended eligibility for spring sports student athletes for this year, potentially look at the winter sports in addition to that. But, man, it is impactful, even at the high school level, because for far more of these young folks, this was it. This was their last chance to really play organized sports. And you just hate to see that opportunity go by the boards. We're going to head to the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line right now and check in with my cohort there at BamaOnline.com. Charlie Potter does an outstanding job covering the Alabama Crimson Tide for us there. And Charlie, hey, if nothing else, some good news for some Alabama fans, or for all Alabama fans this morning, and certainly some great news for Nate Oates in trying to further implement the type of roster that he wants in that program.
Yeah, no doubt. Alabama fans got some good news this morning with Josh Primo committing, combo guard out of Canada. That's the second player out of Canada to sign with Alabama this year under Nate Oates and company, joining Keon Ambrose Hilton. But, yeah, it's a big get. This was something that I was kind of alluded to earlier in the week when he spoke to us on the teleconference. He hinted that they were hopeful they would get a commitment, and he had said how Alabama really wanted to add some guards, some big guards, guys that can catch, dribble, and shoot. And he's a guy that fits all those boxes. And he's a guy that's a kind of a late riser, so to speak. I know that he reclassified to the 2020 class but he's someone that our own Evan Daniels over there at 24/7 Sports believes could be a top 20 player when the rankings are all said and done. So huge get for Nate Oates. It fills the void left behind by Raymond Hawkins, who entered the transfer portal. So now the two spots they have available left behind by Beetle Bolden and Hawkins are filled with Ambrose Hilton and Primo. The thing is now we're going to see, what else happens, because, Nate Oates hinted that they're not done recruiting. I think everyone knows that Kyra Lewis and John Petty have entered their names in the draft without hiring agents, and they could choose to return to school. But, Oates and company are acting like they're going to not be coming back and they're going to be recruiting their replacements. So there should be more Alabama recruiting news and things to follow in the future. But right now, that's the biggest get for Nate Oates since he was hired this time last year. I think this is actually to the date that Alabama hired him. So a nice anniversary gift for Nate Oates, to say the least.
So you start trying to construct a top 7 or so for this Alabama men's basketball team looking ahead to the 2020-2021 campaign, assuming that Kyra Lewis Jr. and John Petty both do take the NBA/professional route. What do you sort of way too early envision, I guess, for a potential 5 that this team could run out there on opening night?
That's tough because there are a lot of uncertainties. I think obviously one guy that you plug in and you can play him at multiple spots is Herb Jones. He showed that he could play the 3 and the 4, and getting guys like James Rojas and Juwan Gary back gives them some flexibility at the forward position, and that's something they didn't have at all this past year because of injuries. So Herb's there somewhere. You can maybe put him at the 4. Maybe a guy like Rojas plays the 4, Herb plays the 3. You got to factor in Jaden Shackelford, who had a phenomenal freshman season, and Nate Oates was really high on when he spoke to us earlier in the week, and he has been all season long. But he's a guy they're going to continue to build around, so you got to imagine he'll probably be at the 2 spot. A guy like Javon Quinterly is another person that has just been consistently praised for the way that he handled the situation and went about his business in practice. He was oftentimes the best player on the floor. So I would give him the nod as a 1 right now in this hypothetical situation. And then the bigs, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out because they could have guys continue to look elsewhere. And I think a guy like Javian Davis, I would imagine he is back. And, right now I'd plug him in as a 5. It'll be interesting to see what they do from a recruiting standpoint at that position because they want to get some more bigs on the roster that can run the floor and can shoot from 3. So, we'll see. But I imagine at least 4 of the 5 will probably be Quinterly, Shackelford, Herb Jones, and Javian Davis. And I think these young guys coming in can make some noise too.
Yeah, and Alex Reese. And he had an unfortunate situation here recently off the floor. I know that Nate Oates addressed that earlier in the week as well. But that's a skill set that Nate Oates likes for a big, a guy that can stretch the floor. I'm sure that they would like to see an increased emphasis on rebounding from Alex Reese. But, yeah, I think the point is, even if, as expected, Kyra Lewis and John Petty move on, there are some pieces with which you can build around, is certainly those 3, Quinterly, Shackelford, Herb Jones. And look, Kyra Lewis came in here a couple of years ago as a reclassification candidate, moved up a year, and certainly impacted this program on the ball, playing the point guard position. So off the ball, largely you would think Josh Primo could perhaps make that type of impact himself. And there's the uncertainty, because we didn't get to see James Rojas this year, right? I mean, we fully anticipated him as a junior college transfer and All-American in the JC level being a big part of this basketball team. Same for Juwan Gary too, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you have 3 new recruits coming in that have been able to go through an entire year of practice with the team, or at least, watching them and being around the team and learning the vernacular, the plays, being familiar with everything. And that's a nice thing to have because Alabama dealt with a lot of depth issues last year. And, now you kind of steal some of those with the guys that you were expecting to have big contributions. I mentioned Rojas for a reason, because he's someone that is a bigger body that can shoot from all areas on the floor, and that's something that they lacked. I think that a lot of times Natos wants to play small. You can have a forward at the four and maybe play four guards. And, you would like to be able to give a guy like Herb Jones a breather, and, Rojas can fill that role. So, I think that obviously Oates and company would have liked to have had Rojas, Gary, and Quinterly on the floor. But to have them back this year and fresh off those injuries and now familiar with everything that goes on in the program, I think that's a big boost.
Charlie, let's talk some football, because the NFL has given us that, I guess, here in the last couple of weeks. Specifically, the recovery of Tua Tagovailoa, which seems to be surging at just the right time, especially when there's nothing else going on at all, and we have these Tua drops on our social media timelines, it seems like, every couple of days. And I know that you were able to speak with some of Team Tua from a representation standpoint. Chris Cabot works with Lee Steinberg in that Steinberg agency that represents Tua. I'll tell you what, and I just talked about it earlier in the first segment. You look at, and I know these mock drafts, their value right now is essentially that of what toilet paper is, but still there seems to be this momentum with Tua now, and he's up to 2 overall in the Washington Redskins in the CBSSports.com 4-round mock that we talked about earlier in the program. What was your takeaway from what we saw, and also from what you've heard here in the last 3 or 4 days?
Yeah, I think just initially when the videos came out, he posted them on Instagram first. He had a couple more over there, and then the one on Twitter really took off. But it was surprising to see how well he was moving, just because the injury was so significant. But everything since the Mississippi State game has been positive for Tua, just in terms of how things have checked out. And Monday's video was kind of the culmination of that. I think it was purposely put out there, the way he was moving around and showing some twitch and things like that, to kind of announce that he's back, that he's fully healthy. And Trent Dilfer is a guy that has been singing to his praises since before he even got on campus, likening him to an Aaron Rodgers and things like that, saying he's the best high school quarterback he's ever seen. And that continued this week. He appeared on the Rich Eisen show, and he even cited what Chris Cabot told me, that if you had not known that the injury had happened, say you were in a coma for the last year and you saw Monday's video, you would never thought anything happened. It didn't look like he was injured at all. And the biggest takeaway from me from what Dilfer told Rich Eisen is that he looks as good, if not better, than he did before the injury. And they've really focused on not only getting him back healthy, yes, but they're doing things to mimic football plays to teach him how to take better care of his body. And they've worked on strengthening his core and things like that. And just in that video alone, and there are more to come, I think that the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive from an NFL standpoint. Clearly, with the coronavirus, things have kind of come to a halt in terms of what Tua is able to do in front of teams, but they're getting creative with video stuff. They're going to be meeting with teams on things like Zoom and FaceTime and Skype and things like that, WebEx. But to be able to get these videos out there, it just is showing further that he is healthy, and they're trying to get him ready to be able to go 100% when OTAs get here.
Seems like, Charlie, in addition to Tua in this Alabama draft class, there are 3 guys considered to be certainties to go along with Tua in the first round. Those 3 being Henry Ruggs III, Jerry Jeudy, and Jedrick Wills. You get to guys like Xavier McKinney and Trayvon Diggs, seems like there's a more of a wide variance of opinions on where those guys will go. I can tell you, Chad Reuter in the same CBSSports.com mock draft that has Tua now at number 2 overall to the Washington Redskins, Chad has Xavier McKinney all the way to the 3rd round to our Jacksonville Jags at number 73 overall, and he has Trayvon Diggs, the corner, at number 62 overall in the second round of the Green Bay Packers. Is that kind of the guys that you would point to in this draft class and think there could be that sort of range in terms of when they go, or do you feel pretty confident that Diggs and McKinney will sort of join those other four guys as first-round guys?
Yeah, they're certainly on the fringe, and it does depend on what mock draft you look at. Earlier in the week, I posted a 3-round mock from CBS, I believe it was Ryan Wilson, and Alabama had 6 players in the first round. Those 2 DBs were in there. I think he had Diggs going to the Saints, and then Xavier McKinney joining Tua in Miami, which would be, I think a lot of people would be jumping on that Dolphins bandwagon. But, I actually recently talked to Xavier McKinney. I'm going to have that up either this weekend or early next week. And, I think he's bummed out that he wasn't able to run his 40 the way that he wanted to at the combine because of the cramps, and the pro day cancellation has affected that, but he still believes he's the best safety in this draft. I think a lot of other people believe that. He has that position flexibility where he can move down in the box. We've seen him play that money position a lot at Alabama. So I think he's still in the conversation to be the top safety in the draft. But if you look at the draft, those guys are going in the latter portion of the first round in a lot of mocks, those guys being both McKinney and Grant Delpit. Corners are guys that you see maybe taking a lot more in the first round. But safety's been a position. We saw it with a guy like Landon Collins, who I think a lot of people considered a first-round quality player, but he's a guy that dropped to the second. So it can happen. It just depends on what those teams at the end of the draft do. And you got to think about there's probably going to be a lot of movement, and Tua Tagovailoa could be the reason for that, with teams moving up to try to pick him. So the back end of the draft is always interesting, but I think that at least one of those DBs can sneak in, and Alabama can get 5 picks in the first round.
Yeah, I need to correct myself on that attribution. Chad Reuter of NFL.com with this 4-round mock that we're talking about here today on the program. The comments from Kirk Herbstreit here in the last 18 hours that he would be shocked if there is football in the NFL and at the collegiate level this fall. Are you ready to go out there with Kirk and taking that sort of approach in late March? Or do you think, Charlie, we're still not quite to that point where we should be discussing that as a very, very real possibility, going beyond the potential for a modified schedule? Where do you kind of sit on those comments from Kirk Herbstreit?
Yeah, I think it's still too early. Obviously, with everything that's going on, I know it's a serious situation and it's a real possibility. But we're still in March, and the football season doesn't kick off until September, and things can happen. There's talks that the peak of the virus hasn't even occurred yet, and things like that. But there's a lot of variables that can happen. I know that football is a sport that takes a lot of preparation, and hearing from Greg Byrne, he and Nick Saban have looked at different ways to do different scenarios for spring practice, whether it's in summer, an extended preseason camp. Those practices are needed, for a sport like football. But at the same time, you got to get creative, and I think it's way too early for that. I'm not of the kind that wants to be on the negative or pessimistic side of things. I've been working on way too early previews of Alabama's 2020 opponents, trying to speak it into existence because I want football season to be here. I don't do this just for a job. I enjoy the sport that much. So I'm more of the optimistic side of things. But yeah, I mean, I realize that that's a real possibility, but I'm just, sitting here on March 27th, I'm not ready to just, turn things in and say things like that. So, I mean, it's one man's opinion. He's entitled to it. He could end up being right, of course, but right now I think it's way too early.
Yeah, I'm not getting worried until Dr. Fauci says that it's in danger. When Doc says we're looking at the potential for no football, that's when I'll take my place up in the bunker for the fall. Hey, Charlie, I know you got plenty of stuff for us there at BamaOnline.com. A lot of great updates. But like the rest of us, you got to fill some downtime. So you an Ozark fan there on Netflix? You excited about season 3, or where you at on it?
I haven't watched it yet. It's on the docket. The thing about the quarantine is, watching things on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. I feel like people, it's the same kind of with the Kirk Herbstreit thing. They're expending all their resources out the gate. There's going to be a lot of downtime. So I'm trying to, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm taking my time. I'm still recovering from Tiger King. So
there is no recovery.
About that.
There's no vaccine. Speaking of vaccines, there's nothing.
Yeah, I had to take a breath from Netflix, but that's on the list. I'm not really good at watching TV shows. I do like things like Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, where you can binge them. So that's good. So that's on the docket. There's other things out there, but I definitely got to get caught up. But I'm trying to savor and have stuff in the back pocket for if we are without football season. I don't want to sit there and not have anything on Netflix to watch. Let's say that.
Tiger King was like Thanksgiving. No, even though you knew you could easily come back for seconds, that first plate you tried to put everything on it anyway. You know what I mean? It was hard to turn away from Tiger King at all. I think I cut it in half basically over a 2-day period. But I've never seen anything like Tiger King on my television, and I'm doubtful I'll ever see anything like Joe Exotic again, ever.
I just hope that, if we do end up not having football season, that they can, expedite a season 2 if that's what they choose to do, because you're just
free Joe Exotic,
hashtag. Some reaction from that. I would love to see, what's next, because there's still a lot more to be told.
Oh my gosh. Unbelievable, man. Anyway, hey, Charlie, we always appreciate the time, my friend. Great job at BamaOnline.com, and look forward to catching up with you soon. Stay safe.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
There he goes, Charlie Potter, BamaOnline.com. Tiger King, man. Oof, still trying to recover from that one. Gosh. Kenny Powers meets Quentin Tarantino meets Oliver Stone meets Faces of Death. That's the best way I know how to sum up Tiger King without giving up any spoilers or anything like that. Gonna head to a break when we come back. More Southern Fried Sports on a Friday, presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier on Tide 100.9 FM right after this. Got Pops coming up next. Yeah, we're going to get into Pops on Point in our final segment of today's show. You know what you're going to have here on Tide 100.9 FM both tomorrow and Sunday? You're going to have the 2008 radio broadcast of Alabama-Clemson from the old Georgia Dome, the real igniter, I would say, to the Nick Saban era, the Nick Saban-led dynasty at the University of Alabama. You're going to have that full radio call, which is, of course, Eli Gold providing you with play-by-play. I believe for that game you actually had Antonio Langham as your analyst there for that 2008 season opener. Tom Roberts also on that broadcast as well. So you're going to want to check that out. Either or both tomorrow and Sunday at noon. You're going to have Alabama-Clemson 2008. Boy, what a game. What a starting point, really, after that 7-6 initial effort by Nick Saban as head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. A resounding thumping of the Clemson Tigers essentially led to the firing. Man, so many different variables to that game. Led to the firing of Tommy Bowden, and then a little-known assistant coach by the name of Dabo Swinney got his opportunity on the heels of that. All started really with that 2008 Alabama-Clemson game. So many lines you can draw from that contest. What about Terrence Cody and his debut in the middle of that Alabama defense? It was like Clemson's offensive line was dealing with a Martian. They didn't know what to do with Terrence Cody in that game. We're going to head to our final break. When we come back, Pops on a Friday. Southern Fried Sports. Tide 100.9 FM right after this. Today also happens to be the 57th birthday for Quentin Tarantino. How about that? So we got a little Quentin Tarantino soundtrack for you, representing 3 of his movies on today's program. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Reservoir Dogs, and that one right there from Pulp Fiction. What about it, Pops? You a Quentin Tarantino fan? You see any of his movies? Any of those ring a bell?
I'm not a big fan of his. I don't know. I like Saturday Night Live. You
like Saturday Night Live, right? You like John Belushi.
And my boy Travolta in back when he played with the Bee Gees,
Yeah, Saturday Night. You like Saturday Night Fever. Yeah,
Saturday Night Fever. That's what I'm talking about.
There are pictures of you out there from the mid-'70s in which you kind of got a Travolta Burt Reynolds hybrid look going.
Oh, hey, I don't know about that, but I'm just telling you, I like those Travolta on that dance floor.
Well, you had the polyester suit, and you had the high heel zip-up boots, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And them collars that hung down to your shoulders,
But the hair was more like 70s Burt Reynolds. You had kind of the flybacks and the Burt Reynolds mustache, Pops.
But Tarantino, I know he must have been good or is good, but I just never got into his stuff.
He was born in Knoxville, Tennessee. I never would have guessed that.
I know.
Yeah.
I'd have thought like New Jersey or somewhere.
Jersey. Pops, so, what are you up to in this quarantine? We talked to you last week, and you talked about how you were quarantined, but then you were 10 miles away from your house. I don't know how that qualifies,
I made it back to the house now. I'm back at home, and I'm doing nothing, actually. It's boring.
Yeah.
I've had way enough of this stuff. I just wish we could get this thing turned around,
I know, Pops. We all got to do our part, Pops.
Yep, we do.
I guess there's only so many times you can water the yard, right?
Huh?
There's only so many times you can water the yard and wash the cars, right?
Exactly. And the thing is, I do it every day, the same thing. I'm like a robot.
Pops has got that Phi-Gam 4Runner, that sorority girl rig that he drives around in. Keeps that thing
I don't
clean.
know why y'all call it that. It's just a car to me. I don't know.
Well, if you were ever in Tuscaloosa for an extended period of time, you would see just a ton of 4Runners with sorority stickers on the back of them. That's all, Pops. Oh, yes.
Well, I guess.
Oh, yes. So what are you watching on the cable? I guess it doesn't change for you that much because you like your shoot 'em ups.
I watched Hondo about 3 times this past week. John Wayne.
Yeah.
Everything I watch at least 3 or 4 times already.
How many times have you cut the grass this week?
Actually, I cut it yesterday, and I'm going to cut it today, too.
Double cut.
Yeah.
Now, what's left to cut, Pops? Are you changing the blade height so you can cut it twice a week to give you something to do?
Well, it just gives me, I got to get some exercise.
I know. I know, and you can't leave the house.
No, I can't. And I'm not going to just sit here,
Yeah. But it's not ideal if you and Nana stay in the house together all day.
Oh,
Is that a correct assumption?
I got the outside, and she stays on the inside.
Uh-huh.
We get the hollering and stuff, and it's not good for our, relationship.
You'll come in for that egg salad sandwich, though.
Oh, yeah. I'll be right there. She doesn't have to call me but once.
Mm-hmm. Is that what we're having today?
Actually, it is. It's that egg salad. When she goes months without making egg salad, and then all of a sudden when I complain we hadn't had egg salad in a while, she'll make it every day.
Have you had a pineapple sandwich lately?
Yes, I have. She bought a whole pineapple and peeled it and cut it up, and thick sliced pineapple sandwich.
So, Pops, what's the live sports content you miss the most right now? Is it the start of baseball? Is it college softball? Is it basketball, the NCAA tournament? Which of these that we should have either now or coming up? You're going to have the Masters that you're not going to have in a couple weeks. Which do you or will you miss the most here in this stretch?
March Madness I enjoy because I always pull for the underdog, and I swear it seemed like this year there were so many teams that looked like they had a chance of winning the thing, you know.
Yeah, it was wide open.
And I thought it was going to really be interesting. I think I'll probably miss that the most.
We're actually replaying old Alabama games, the radio broadcast of them on the weekends up here on our station, Pops. What do you think of that?
Well, I watched a replay of a football game the other night, and it was great. I couldn't believe it because it was two teams I've never, don't follow.
So it was like it was live to you.
Yeah,
I mean, you hadn't seen it before, so why
I
not?
pretended it was live.
You could watch that Super Bowl III a few times, though, couldn't you? Your boy Joe Willie and the Jets.
The best game of all time.
Kurt Gowdy. Yeah.
The best game of all time. Joe Willie called that one, and that's all there was to it.
Called his shot.
Yes,
Called his shot against those Colts of Don Shula. Hey, Pops, we'll let you get to that egg salad.
All
Wash
right,
your
man.
hands, though. All right.
Well, y'all hang in there, and we'll talk to you next week.
There he goes. Pop's going to cut the grass down there for the second time in as many days. Got to keep him outside right now, man. He's a handful. He's a handful. Tough. That's a tough cat to quarantine right there, Pops. That's going to do it for a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports. Thanks to Josh Smith for producing it. Thanks to Charlie Potter for joining us. The Lunch Whistle, Southern Ale House, 205-248-7500. That's going to get you the curbside service at Southern Ale House at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hill section of Tuscaloosa. You also have delivery options available to you with Southern Ale, such as Grubhub. So do it right now, 205-248-7500. That's going to get your order placed, and you get that curbside service at Southern Ale. Until 11 a.m. on Monday, have a safe and best as you can weekend, everybody.